let's take a look at how the planet Jupiter represents the Messiah. This recent Hubble Space Telescope video was compiled from images taken on June the 27th of 2019, when Jupiter was 400 million miles from Earth and was near opposition, or almost directly opposite the Sun in the sky. Jupiter completes one rotation every 9.8 hours. The first thing to notice is how big Jupiter is. As the largest planet in our solar system, it has always attracted attention. Earlier civilizations looked to Jupiter as their chief god. To the Romans, it was known as Jupiter, the name which we still use today. To the Greeks, it was Zeus. To the Babylonians, it was Marduk. And to the Canaanites, it was Baal. Today, with modern imaging equipment and spacecraft, we're able to see Jupiter like no one before us. What you will soon see is very startling. Yes, Jupiter does represent the greatest god, but it is not any of the ancient deities. As we take a close look at its details, it will be unmistakably clear that Jupiter gives the whole world a clear description of Yeshua, the Messiah from Israel. It is, in fact, preaching the gospel from space. King David wrote, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork." Let's take a look at what he was talking about. Jupiter is by far the largest planet in our solar system. It has a mass of more than 2.5 times of all the other planets combined. Jupiter is the king of the planets, just like the Messiah is king. Jupiter is the 5th planet from the Sun. 5 stands for grace or favor. God showed us favor by sending the Messiah to shed his blood for our sins. Jupiter shows the solar system favor by acting as a vacuum cleaner. Its immense gravity sucks up stray comets and asteroids that could endanger the Earth. Jupiter is the only planet with stripes, just like Yeshua the Messiah. The Messiah was whipped with stripes all over his body, just like Jupiter has the stripes all over its body. So then, Pilate took Yeshua and scourged him. The Shroud of Turin shows that there were 370 lashes on both sides of Yeshua's body. Here's a prophecy from Isaiah stating that the Messiah would be whipped with stripes given 700 years before the event actually happened. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. Peter saw that Yeshua had fulfilled Isaiah's prophecy, so he reworded it in a past tense form. He said, "Who himself bore our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, having died to sins, might live for righteousness, by whose stripes you were healed." Here's the first video ever of Jupiter's stripes. Voyager 1 took these 66 images as it approached the planet in January of 1979. This is the first color video of Jupiter's bands taken by the Cassini spacecraft in November of the year 2000. This close-up look at Jupiter's stripes shows that incredibly they are flowing in opposite directions, and they look just like blood circulating in arteries. There is even a red color to some of the stripes. This video covers from 60 degrees south to 60 degrees north of Jupiter's equator. We can see 19 distinct stripes flowing in alternating directions. NASA's Juno spacecraft caught this image of Jupiter's Great Red Spot on February the 12th of 2019. The red spot really looks huge. Jupiter is the only planet with a great red spot on its side, just like Yeshua the Messiah. Yeshua has a great red spot on his side too. That's where a spear pierced him. In 2018, Italian scientists created a statue with the precise image of what Jesus looked like. They mapped a 3D replica from the image on the Shroud of Turin. And here it is. And the biggest wound on his body is the great red spot, and it's on his right side. 2/3 of the heart is located on the left side of the body, but the muscle there is thicker because it has to perform 90% of the work pumping the blood. So the right side only has to collect blood on the return trip and will be easier to puncture with a spear. But one of the soldiers pierced his side with the spear, and immediately blood and water came out. Take a look at Voyager 1's 1979 close-up video of the Great Red Spot and notice that it does look like a dark and white liquid, blood and water coming out. Cassini's 2000 close-up video shows a deep red interior with a lighter outer circumference of a more lighter liquid. Notice that the red spot is circulating counterclockwise and it's in the southern hemisphere, meaning it is a high-pressure system. This is indicative of blood flowing out of the wound under pressure. Everything fits perfectly, just like a real wound would be. This image by Hubble is from a time-lapse of the Aurora of Jupiter using far ultraviolet light taken on June 2nd of 2016. It reveals that Jupiter has a crown of thorns, just like Yeshua the Messiah. When they had twisted a crown of thorns, they put it on his head and a reed in his hand, and they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." Note how the crown is uneven and lopsided, resembling a twisted vine. There even are scattered spots, just like puncture wounds, exactly as we see on the back of Yeshua's head from the Shroud of Turin. Jupiter has rings just like Saturn, except instead of being made of beautiful, glimmering ice crystals, they're ugly, faint, dull rocks. We didn't even know that Jupiter had any rings until March the 4th, 1979, when NASA's Voyager 1 spacecraft took this image that just happened to perfectly catch the light, revealing them. This was the only picture that showed a ring. The Galileo mission in 1996 took a much better picture of Jupiter's rings because it was the first spacecraft to orbit an outer planet, and it orbited Jupiter for almost 8 years. The New Horizons spacecraft took what has turned out to be the clearest picture ever of Jupiter's ring system on February the 24th of 2007 using its long-range reconnaissance imager telescopic camera, which was originally intended to map the far side of Pluto. So from 4.4 million miles away, here's the best overall picture of Jupiter's ring system. It is interesting that scientists call the faint dust inside Jupiter's rings a halo. This fine dust extends down to Jupiter's cloud tops and produces a faint glow. Therefore, Jupiter has still yet another correlation to the Messiah. They both carry the glory of God. Jupiter has a halo just like Yeshua the Messiah. Jupiter's dull faint rings speak of the Messiah's humility, just the opposite of flamboyant Saturn. Yeshua first humbled himself by giving up his heavenly position to become a man, but then he doubly humbled himself by his suffering. You wouldn't have known that he had the right to wear a king's ring if you were right in front of him. Likewise, Jupiter doesn't easily reveal its kingly ring either. So here's the 7th characteristic that Jupiter has in common with the Messiah. Jupiter is extremely humble, just like Yeshua the Messiah. The complete Jewish Bible has the best translation describing Yeshua's incredible ability to exhibit humility upon even more humility. This is an amazing personality trait that is otherwise unheard of. Yet Jupiter's faint rings give us a great picture of just how humble Yeshua is and was. When your very best photo is just only black and white without any color, you know you're dealing with a humble person. Though he, Yeshua, was in the form of God, he did not regard equality with God something to be possessed by force. On the contrary, he emptied himself in that he took the form of a slave by becoming like human beings are. And when he appeared as a human being, he humbled himself still more by becoming obedient even to death. Death on a stake as a criminal. Therefore, God raised him to the highest place and gave him a name above every name. Jupiter has an uncanny resemblance to Yeshua the Messiah. There is no doubt about it. All you have to do is look. We now have the privilege of living in the days after the telescope was invented, so we can see God's plan in more detail than previous generations. Is it no wonder that in these last days we can clearly see that the true representation of the planet Jupiter is Yeshua, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the greatest God of all, the name above all names. What was hidden to the previous generations can be clearly seen today. The Juno spacecraft was the first to image Jupiter's clouds in three-dimensional beauty. Its special radiation-hardened body enabled it to make very close approaches, as long as they were really short and fast. Here's a 55-second flyby from October the 29th of 2018 showing all of Jupiter's intricate beauty, another attribute of the Messiah.